Hey there. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the BFCM discount calculator. So this is a custom calculator that I have made on my own. And this is basically going to give you a very good idea about what kind of discounting strategy you should employ when you're trying to maximize your profits, your returns during the Black Friday and Cyber Monday period. So for any e-commerce brand owner or for any performance marketer, this is a very crucial part of the year. And as I'm making this video, we are just less than 3 months away from BFCM, and this is that part of the year where for towards which every marketer and every brand owner is basically looking at and hoping to maximize their sales. And the common method that they generally employ during this period is to give discounts, which is why I have come up with this discount calculator, because this is based on very sound economic principles. I have found that a lot of performance marketers as well as e-commerce brand store owners, they don't have any clear idea about the kind of strategy that they should have when it comes to discounting. And discounting is essentially a pricing strategy, right? And pricing mechanisms are fundamentally based on the principles of economics, which is why it's important to stick to the fundamental principles rather than having any kind of random and unsophisticated method, which is simply not going to yield the desirable results. So let's jump right into the calculator that I'm talking about. It's essentially pretty simple, but it's important to note the underlying concepts here. So let's start with the target spend. So 200,000 is the target spend that has been taken for this particular analysis. Again, this can be in any currency, so it can be in dollars. So this has been done keeping in mind US dollars as the currency. So the first thing that I've done here is that I've split this analysis into two parts. One is for new customers and the other is for returning customers, and I think that makes perfect sense. Especially for D2C brands, we are seeing continuously that it's always the new customers who have to be acquired. It's really the new customer acquisition that's probably more important than just focusing on returning customers. Um, it's certainly not true that returning customers are going to come anyway and we don't need to do any marketing for that. That's not correct. That's, of course, the other extreme of the spectrum. But new customer acquisition is so fundamentally crucial, because unless you are adding new customers to your funnel, to your audience base, to your customer base, you are simply not able to, you're simply not going to be in a position to scale your brand. And that's why splitting these two up is important, because the costs of acquisition, the other important intermediate metrics like CPM, CTR, conversion rate, as you can see that we have discussed here, these are going to vary certainly for new customers and returning customers. So what I've done here is that I've first jotted down some of the threshold metrics threshold numbers for the metrics like CPM, CTR, and conversion rate for both new customers and returning customers separately. And you might notice here that the conversion rate is more for returning customers, and that makes sense, right? Because they have already been customers previously, so they're more likely to convert at a higher percentage. And the CTR is also higher, but the CPM is also going to be higher. Okay, and that's because it's a much tighter, smaller, narrower audience, and therefore platforms like Facebook are going to charge you more. It's going to be more expensive to reach out to that same audience again. So these benchmark numbers being taken, we now move on to the next slab of metrics, which will be UPT. UPT is units per transaction. So how many units of the particular item are being purchased in every transaction, basically. So this for the purposes of this particular analysis or calculator, I've taken to be 1. But the reason why I have included it is because you can actually change it and update it according to the UPT that is more relevant in your case. Then we obviously have the cost per acquisition, and this is a calculated metric. And if I just hover over the formula here, you will see that it's done very easily using the spend, which is divided by the CPM and then multiplied by 1,000, and then multiplied by CTR and CVR to finally arrive at the cost per acquisition. So cost per acquisition has come out to be 50 and 28 for new customers and 28 for returning customers. Once again, this makes sense because returning customers, would be less expensive, and new customers should be more expensive. So that's kind of like revisiting the basics of the economics. So that's precisely why you have to split these two and look at the numbers separately. So when it comes to margins, though, the margins are not going to be different. That's what we've taken here, because eventually the margin, the product margin or the profit margin that you have, is independent of the kind of customer, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a new customer, returning customer. You'll still have the same kind of margins from every purchase that you're making. So then we come to profit contribution. Profit contribution is simply the difference between the break-even CAC and the CAC. Okay, and the break-even CAC is the profit margin. If I just jump into the formula here, you'll see that it's the margin multiplied by the AOV. Okay, so essentially, that is the maximum amount that you're able to spend, right? That's the profit absolute value, because you're multiplying the AOV by the profit margin percentage. So that's the amount of profit that you can make from every sale, and that's obviously also the reason why you can sort of completely reuse that without making any profit ultimately, but you can reuse that in order to spend in your ads. That's why to sort of acquire another customer, not just spend in ads. So that's why that's the break-even CAC. Okay. And the profit contribution, though, is going to be any difference between the actual CAC and the break-even CAC. So, again, the corresponding numbers for returning customers are given here. The AOV has been considered as higher. The margin has been considered as the same, but the AOV has been considered as higher for returning customers, because once again they are likely to have slightly more higher price. The site makes slightly higher priced purchases than the new customers. And then comes the more important question. We obviously took CPM, we took some benchmark metrics, but is CPM really going to be constant during the phase of BFCM? This is where the real factor of BFCM really comes into the picture. There will be in fact two important variables here. If I just jump into slightly the right side of this calculator here, you'll see that there's CPM, and then there's also CVR, or conversion rate. So the hypothesis is this, and this has actually been proven time and again, so this is a very well-established hypothesis, is that CPM is going to rise during BFCM. Okay, and that is almost a certainty, because there's so many advertisers in your niche, in your product industry, that are going to start advertising and pushing more money into the system, and therefore it's definitely going to bring about, you can say in a sense, inflation within the Facebook ecosystem, and that's why the CPMs rise, right? So basically you're going to get less bang for the buck, and which is why you either need to spend more or you need to improve your conversion rate in order to maintain, let alone scale during the BFCM period. But the advantage is that the conversion rate is going to rise, okay, and you don't actually have to do too much, because people generally tend to spend more during that period. So it is really the interplay between CPM and CVR, which is ultimately the game-changing thing, and how well you are able to harness this balancing act between these two metrics is ultimately what is going to decide whether or not you're successful, or if you are, to what extent you are successful. So now we are going to talk about the two alternative methods. I'm going to talk about that I'm going to show about how you can basically use the BFCM calculator. The first is really to vary discounts to match the fixed break-even margin. So what do I mean by that? I mean that in this case, you're basically going to have a variable, the discount as a variable. Okay, so you're going to have different discount slabs, but you're going to have the different discount slabs in such a way so as always to meet the break-even margin, which has been kept fixed. Okay, so in this case, if you just jump back to the original numbers, you'll see that it's 60%. So 60% margin has been kept as the fixed year mark or threshold, and then you are setting a different discounts. Okay, so let's actually jump into this particular tab here, which is called rough calculation, and this is where all the calculations have been done for the different possibilities. and it has been done separately for new customers and returning customers. So if I just take one of these examples here, so you'll see. So first of all, conversion rate is also varying. As I said, there's a possibility that conversion rates are going to increase. This is something that can happen to a certain extent because of market fluctuation, because of a general upward trend in the market itself. People are going to have a greater propensity to make purchases during this period, but also because of certain interventions that you can make to make it easier, or to sort of make it more lucrative to make a purchase during this period. This could be in the form of CRO strategies, or in the form of other offers that you have done, that you have basically put forward in front of customers. So conversion rate is increasing. So if I just take this particular example where the conversion rate is being pegged at 1.5, which was the initial conversion rate taken for new customers. You have UPT fixed at 1, you have the AOV that was 90, right, again for new customers, and then you have a CPM which has actually risen by 25%, as you can see here, right? So this 25% rise, again, this is an estimation, this is something that you can change, but based on this 25% rise from 15, you have a new CPM of 18.75. Based on this now, you're going to actually have a calculation of the new AOV. So how do we do that? That calculation has been done here. So this, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to have a break-even CAC, which is going to be equal to the CAC, which means that we are talking about an absolute threshold. Okay, so where there is no profit contribution, and in that case, you will be able to calculate the AOV, because that is simply going to be the break-even divided by the margin percentage, right? So that's how we basically calculate the AOV. And so you have the new AOV as 104.17. As you can see here, it's C8, this one here, right? So this is how we are calculating in every single case for for the different values of the different combinations of the conversion rates and the CPMs, which are also remaining the same. But on the basis of that, once you have the new AOV, it's also very easy to calculate the discount by this simple formula, which is just taking the difference and then the ratio. So this has been given a conditional formatting. That's why this coloring scheme is here, meaning that it's it's a negative discount, and then it's a very small positive discount, and then it's gradually moving upwards up to close to almost 50% discount. So what does a negative discount really mean? It means that you actually have to increase the AOV, right? And that's what we can see here. Your old AOV was 90, but now it has become 104, right? So meaning that for this particular combination of conversion rate and the CPM of 18.75, a 25% increase in CPM, you are simply not going to be able to afford to, get the same level of margins by maintaining the previous AOV. You will have to actually, or in fact, give discounts. On the contrary, you will actually have to increase the AOV. Okay, so you can't give discounts there. So you have to increase the pricing. So in order to be, profitable, I mean, this is just the baseline, right? This is the break even that I'm talking about. So you will actually have to do better than that. So maybe the conversion rate has to be a little better, or I don't know, maybe a little lower CPM if it's possible. But the idea is that you have to at least hit that number in order to be able to give this level of discount. So that's the idea. So we actually start getting into the positive zone at some point, but of course we are looking at 1.75% here, and we can see that now we have a positive discount that is possible to break even at least. Okay. So this is this is giving a very good idea about the kind of variation that you should have between conversion rates and discounts in order to maintain the previous levels of profitability and starting with the break even. Now, one thing to note here, like I just mentioned, I just gave a brief hint that 1.75 is not necessarily the first time that you're hitting the positive point. So this is a continuous thing, right? So this is not basically a discrete slab that we're talking about. It's a continuous distribution. So it's always actually to do a distribution analysis of this. I'll be doing that in an updated version of this as well. And I'll share that in a later version of this sheet. So that was for new customers. We can actually have this for new returning customers as well, where we will have the conversion rate that's going to start at 2.0%, as you can see here, and then you're going to have a 0.25 increase, very much like in the previous case as well. It was always 0.25% more than the previous version of the conversion rate. And then we're going to have the UPTs, the old AOVs, the CPMs, and then the new AOVs and the discounts, right? And in this case, what we find is that the CPM has increased to 23.4%, because for returning customers, we just mentioned that the CPM is likely to increase, right? Is likely to be higher for returning customers. We already had taken that. It started from 18 as the baseline, but we also think that it's going to rise higher. And again, this is something that we have seen. This is anecdotal, but at the same time, it's based on a lot of experience. I mean, experience with a lot of cases where we have seen that the CPM rises more in the case of returning customers. Okay, so that's why the older CPM of 18 has now become 23.4, and now we have different slabs of conversion rates, and correspondingly, to maintain the break-even margin, we have these different slabs of discounts that can be offered. Of course, anything above, so the reason why you might wonder why the lesser number of slabs here is because that we wanted to just show a few cases, and anything above 50% is already probably a little bit of too much of discount, right? You obviously want to maintain a sanctity of the brand. Anything above 50% is certainly not good. So yeah, try to keep it below 50%, and that's why only these few have been shown. So that was the first alternative, where you are varying the discounts to match the fixed break even. There's an alternative route, okay? And the second alternative is to actually vary the margins. If you are able to do this, if you are able to work with varying margins, you can actually vary the discounts this time, and based on the different discount percentages, you can have different margins. Okay, so you will therefore be able to match the required discount percentage with the new and changed margin. Okay, so pretty much everything is varying in this particular context. Okay, now how do we measure that? So first of all, once again, we're going to split it up into new customers and returning customers, right? And we're going to now take into account CPM and CVR as well. And this time, discount, instead of being on the right hand side, it's now inside this particular table, because this is one of the inputs, because we have decided it's going to be 10% discount. We're not calculating the discount this time. We have gone ahead and decided, okay, let's give a 10% discount, and let's see what's going to be the new margin, and we're going to have to reoperate according to that new margin. So this is of course something that you will have to see whether or not this is possible, and you can see here it makes sense. And by the way, the calculations are again very similar. So as you can see here, the different cases, 23.4, and then you have the discount percentages, break-even CAC being equal to the CAC, similar sort of thing. So if I just look into this particular example here, uh, let's just look at that. So I think this is the case here, and you will see that we have an AOV of 81. So that was because there was a 10% discount on the older AOV of 90, and a similar one for returning customers, where the older AOV was 95, and we had a new AOV of 85.5, and that's basically how we can get to the margin. So in case of new customers, it will be a 48% new margin, and in case of the returning customers, it's 43%. As you can see that the conditional formatting has been done in a way which obviously gives a higher greener value, a darker greener value basically to anything with a higher margin. So obviously you would want to operate with higher margins, right? And again, this is very intuitive that as the discounts are getting bigger, you're basically able to operate at a much lesser margin here. Now, one thing to note, again, just like I said for this, is that first of all, it's a distribution, so it's not a discrete thing, and there might be values in between these conversion rates that have been taken, or in between these discount rates that you might be interested in, because, for instance, you might have the threshold or the transition phases precisely in between these values. So when the discount, the possible or acceptable discount rate at which the break-even margin is going to be arrived at, that might actually be somewhere between 1.5 and 1.75%, right? Because we already have a 0.79% discount possible to break even in this example. So that's why you want to have a distribution, and this is basically the simplest way. This is a fairly advanced concept if you think of it. There are multiple variables that are involved together that are playing a part, and they're playing a part in different ways, and sometimes in divergent or even contradictory ways. So sometimes for the bigger brands, the better practice is to actually apply machine learning concepts as well. Models like XGBoost or advanced versions of tree-based algorithms. People might be using those things because there the decision making is going to be better when so many variables and their complex interplay is involved. But nonetheless, you can at least start with the distribution, and the distribution is at least going to give you a graphical representation of the fact, and therefore you will be able to isolate those specific cases which you want to really look at, and ones which might be missing from a simple tabular format, which is only going to give you discrete values. So that actually gives you an idea about the relationship between discount and margin, but it's also dependent, as you can see, on a CPM that has been increased by a certain percentage. It has been earmarked at a 25% increase. And once more, this is of course dependent on different slabs of conversion rates. You might want to also do another thing here, just as an exercise I'm giving you, just as a food for thought. You might want to take the same levels of conversion rate, same levels of CPM increase, and then look at the different varying levels of discount and the corresponding margins, right? And this will be a very interesting exercise, because then you will be able to see that, okay, let's consider that the conversion rate remains constant. Then how much can I vary my discount rate? And based on that, how much would I have to change my margin? What altered margin would I have to operate in? So so that would be also one of the more realistic cases, right? But you can see here that when you are increasing the discount, there is also a possibility that your conversion rate is going to increase, right? Because more people are more likely to purchase because you are giving a higher discount. So it makes sense, it's logical at the same time, but you might also want to do that exercise, just because you might have a very clearer picture on what is the kind of margins that you will be requiring with respect to discount, because then you are eliminating another variable. You can say a confounding variable, which is actually having an important part here, which is the conversion rate, right? So that is basically the entire picture, and what I would suggest is that you give the numbers, you use the numbers that you are dealing with for your own client, plug in the numbers here and try and update it, and see if you find any kind of limitations of this approach. I think this is definitely got merit, and you will be able to apply any of these two alternative approaches in order to make the best out of your BFCM strategies. So happy BFCM strategizing, and hope you like the video. If you have any questions or any suggestions, do share them below in the comments, and I will meet you in the next video. Thanks for watching.